On December 28, 2015, a landmark agreement between Japan and South Korea on the long-standing comfort women issue was reached in Seoul, South Korea. By this agreement, Prime Minister Abe formally apologized and agreed to pay 1 billion yen, or $8.3 million, to the surviving comfort women in South Korea to resolve this issue between Japan and South Korea, finally and irreversibly. Although two governments seemed satisfied, there has been some negative response from Korean civic groups. Many Koreans in the United States wish to continue to build memorial statues in America to the comfort women. I'm not here today to criticize any party involved, but I want to add some truth to what's been told to the world. I hope you consider my points carefully. 50 years ago, on December 18, 1965, Japan and South Korea agreed that Japan would compensate South Korea for all damages inflicted by the Japanese military. The treaty required Japan to provide $800 million in financial and technological aid. By this agreement, all claims against Japan by South Korea arising from the Second World War would be deemed paid in full and closed forever. Yet, decades later, new claims arose against Japan. It all started because of one book. In 1977, a Japanese writer, Seiji Yoshida, published Korean Comfort Women and Japanese People. This issue attracted a lot of attention and media coverage. In 1983, Yoshida published a second book, My War Crimes, which was translated into Korean. Yoshida claimed that he had transported 205 Korean women from Jeju Island to provide comfort women for Japanese soldiers. Yoshida insisted everything he had written was true. He claimed he was tormented by his actions in Korea during the Second World War. Yoshida was praised by the Japanese political left and many people in Korea. And Yoshida had been involved for years in politics before his writing career took off. In 1947, he unsuccessfully ran for the city council as a communist candidate in Shimonoseki. He made a living as a writer, but was largely unknown until he wrote about the comfort women. In 1982, Asahi, one of Japan's largest newspapers, started printing his story without confirming the facts. In reality, many comfort women had been recruited by brothels through advertising in Japanese newspapers and local Korean papers during the Second World War. After Yoshida's second book was published, Japanese historians pointed out factual discrepancies between his two books. Even South Korean media began to question their authenticity. However, soon after his second book was translated into Korean in 1989, ex-comfort women started coming forward, claiming they had been victimized. In the same year, a local paper, Jeju, conducted a full investigation about abduction on Jeju Island. Although a local historian, Kim Bong-gyuk, and a female reporter, Hyo Yang-shen, from Jeju, interviewed local residents, no one could recall any military abduction of young women. On August 14, 1989, Jeju wrote an article casting grave doubts about Yoshida's story. Later on, even Korean newspapers dismissed with these women's claims of having been victims. When the Japanese government held hearings in 1993, scores of women testified. The government found the testimony to be inadequate. This led to tirades of criticism against the Japanese government by a left-wing journalist and a lawyer in the early 1990s. Asahi printed an article on August 11, 1991, that led people in South Korea to confuse the Japanese Women's Volunteer Corps with the Comfort Women. As a result, many people came to believe that the Comfort Women included very young girls. Instead of responding appropriately, Japanese officials repeatedly apologized to calm down protests coming from South Korea. In 1996, faced with negative results in the investigations conducted by both Japanese and Korean historians, Yoshida finally confessed that his stories had been fabricated. Unfortunately, even after Yoshida's confession, Asahi waited years before admitting its mistake. On December 23, 2014, after decades of supporting Yoshida, Asahi at last admitted Yoshida had not told the truth and retracted all its earlier articles of the Comfort Women issue. However, years of repeated media coverage and delayed admission of a mistake by one of Japan's leading newspapers had convinced many people that a grave wrong and being perpetrated on Korean women by the Japanese military. Nevertheless, Japan continues to demonstrate sincere atonement by helping countries afflicted by Japanese militarism. The number of recipients of Japan's ODA extends to over 100 countries today, most of which were never involved in the Second World War. Even though Japan provided South Korea in 1965 with $800 million in financial aid, more than twice the national budget of South Korea at the time, Japan still assists South Korea financially. In the 1970s, Japan financed South Korea's first subway. In the 1980s, Japanese loans enabled Koreans to finish the Seoul subway network. Even today, Japan provides South Korea with a stream of economic and technological assistance and cooperation. After 1995, the Japanese government sponsored the Asian Women's Fund of AWF to express Japanese people's compassion towards ex-Comfort women. An advertisement placed in 6 major Japanese newspapers by the Japanese government in 1995 seeking private donations for ex-Comfort women led Japanese citizens to donate $5 million. And this fund continued to run until March 31st, 2007. From 1996 to 2001, the Japanese government ran a medical and welfare support project for AWF to fulfill its responsibility to military wrongs committed in South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia, and to Dutch nationals who had been living in Indonesia. By the 1990s, Japan became the largest provider of foreign aid and remains the 5th largest donor of foreign aid in the world today. Yet, no matter how sincerely Japan strives to make up for past wrongdoings, Japan remains haunted by incessant accusations of the comfort women. What is being said about Japan on this issue in the international community is not true. It's giving the impression that Japan today is an international villain. On the contrary, today's Japan is a free and democratic society that is no threat to any other nation. Japan's constitution bars militarism, and its self-defense forces are forbidden from launching aggressive war against foreign countries. All they can do is protect Japan from invasion. Today, Japan is one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Since the militarist Japan is long dead, what is the point of placing comfort women monuments in American parks? It has nothing to do with American history and American culture. They don't belong on American soil. The continuing monument campaign not only damages the reputation of a peaceful and democratic Japan, but also endangers the security and safety of Japanese Americans and their children, who had nothing to do with the comfort women issue. The monument campaign, if continued, has the potential for causing more conflict between Japanese Americans and Korean Americans. The past can place terrible burdens on nations. Japan's sincere efforts to compensate for past wrongs and to promote world peace must not be nullified over and over again. Let us put these burdens behind us. It's time to move on. Thank you.